Good evening, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to your Commitment 2018 Election Eve special preview before the big night tomorrow. Tomorrow is voting day, Election Day, in New Hampshire. We got major races we are keeping eyes on. The governor's race, the candidates for 1st Congressional District, and candidates for 2nd Congressional District. Those candidates running for governor are Governor Chris Sununu and opponent Molly Kelly. For 1st Congressional District, candidates that are running are Chris Pappas and Eddie Edwards. And for 2nd Congressional District, U.S. Rep. Annie Kuster and Republican Steve Negron. I will tell you what my predictions are, but let's go to some other things first. Candidates for governor optimistic on eve of election. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9, Amy Cavino.
Somewhere between a grimace and a grin, Governor Sununu was showered with song at the Nashua Rotary Club Monday.
Not really a birthday guy, but my kids and my wife are, so thank you very much for that.
Some extra love in the room for challenger Molly Kelly as well. Her sister, number 10 of 11 kids, flew in from Indiana to help with the final push for votes for her eldest sister.
But I learned a very important lesson growing up in such a large family. If one of us was to succeed, I learned that we all needed to succeed. And that is how I will govern in New Hampshire.
Kelly and Sununu gave their final pitches to a room of about 100 Nashua business people, and by this stage of the race, the themes are familiar.
And we're going to make sure everyone has opportunities. I'm going to make our schools safe for our children. I think that's most important to parents and to children.
Sununu emphasized his positive campaign and urges voters to check his record.
I just ask people to look at the results of New Hampshire. You don't let the negativity of Washington define our success, define our results, because we got it by bringing people in, by being collaborative, by being positive, working together. That is what was the kind of the secret sauce, if you will, of New Hampshire's success.
And then back to the tried and true retail politics that New Hampshire voters expect.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Good luck tomorrow.
Thanks for the support. You bet.
And for most of this race, incumbent Governor Chris Sununu has enjoyed a comfortable lead over challenger Molly Kelly, but polls in the last week or so have shown that lead narrowing, in some cases quite a bit. At this point, it's all in the hands of the voter, and we all get the answer tomorrow. We're live in Concord. Amy Cavino, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Again, it's all in the hands of everyone voting tomorrow. First district candidates reach out to voters on last day of campaign. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9, Adam Sexton.
America's mayor, who is now President Trump's lawyer, was in Manchester Monday, giving a last-minute boost to Eddie Edwards in the final hours of campaign 2018.
Vote for his opponent, you're voting for Nancy Pelosi. And you're voting for Jerry Nadler, and you're voting for Maxine Waters. And these are the people that are going to run things.
For Edwards, this in-person link to the president is an important signal to the Trump voters who turned out in droves in the 1st Congressional District in 2016.
I want to be someone who supports America First agendas. I think it's time that we stand up for American families. I don't think there's any shame in making sure that American families are taken care of.
In Derry, Chris Pappas teamed up with former Governor John Lynch for a stop at Mary Ann's Diner. Lynch says Pappas is a leader who wants to unite rather than divide.
Even when I was governor, people would say they want us to work together. And that's not happening in Washington. And Chris will be a positive force for bringing people together.
Pappas says, in contrast to Edwards, he's not looking to go to Washington as an ally of President Trump.
I think at the end of the day, this election's about checks and balances and who's going to put the people of New Hampshire first and fight the forces in Washington that are undermining our success right here in the Granite State.
Important to remember, both of these candidates overperformed expectations in the primary, winning by wider than expected margins. So not only is this a well-matched race when it comes to resumes, with Pappas and his business background and Edwards and his service record, the numbers also show that these are candidates voters generally like. It is a real clash of the titans in CD1 tomorrow. Mike?
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that race is going to be a tight one to see who will have the seat tomorrow. Custer Negron make final push ahead of Election Day. Let's take a listen to this video from WMUR News 9, Mike Cronin.
Democrat Annie Kuster hopes voters will send her back to Washington, where she says she fights for New Hampshire values every day. We caught up with her at a campaign office in Lebanon. She also made stops in New London, Hanover, and Claremont today. We found Republican Steve Negron holding signs in Peterborough after he visited Nashua, Wilton, Temple, and Keene. Negron says the 2nd District is ready for a change and that he'd bring a new approach to Congress.
Very big issues to us. The opiate issue hasn't gotten better in the 6 years with Congresswoman Kuster. The veterans that I'm talking about, being a veteran myself, you know, what's going on with the VA Medical Center, that hasn't gotten better.
We care about our schools, we care about our environment, we care about everybody, whatever their religion or background. We are the party that cares.
Steve Negron will watch the election results come in tomorrow night from Nashua, while Annie Kuster will be in Concord. Reporting live in Peterborough, Mike Cronin, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that will be an interesting race to watch as well. Bernie Sanders urges UNH students to vote Tuesday. Senator Bernie Sanders urges a group of students at the University of New Hampshire Sunday to vote, saying this week's election is most important midterm election in U.S. history. The independent U.S. Senator's message for young voters: bringing your friends and your family members and your co-workers out. Let us stand for justice. Let us stand up for democracy. Let's win on Tuesday. Sanders spoke in front of a large crowd at a Get Out the Vote rally on UNH Durham campus that was organized by the New Hampshire Youth Movement in Rights and Democracy. Sanders, who is considering whether to seek the presidency in 2020, also attended pre-election rallies in his home state of Vermont, where he is up for re-election Tuesday to his 3rd term in the Senate. During the UNH appearance, Sanders complied younger Americans for being what he called the most progressive generation in history of the United States, but he also pointed out that historically young people don't vote as often. Sanders noted the low voter turnout in the 2014 midterm election, saying that 2 out of 3 Americans didn't vote. Young people barely voted at all. And what was the result? The result was in Washington. Republicans did extraordinarily well controlling the U.S. Senate and controlling the U.S. House. Sanders warned that if you are not vigorous in getting out the vote in this election, no doubt in mind that the Republicans will once again attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act and do away with protection in pre-existing conditions, and that is something that we cannot allow. Pointing to the nation's current political climate, Sanders also stressed that the midterm elections was about more than the economy and health care, saying it's about who we are as people. He didn't discuss the next race for the White House, but Sanders did take aim at the Republican President Donald Trump, urging that we're seeing a significant increase in hate crimes all across this country because Trump has opened the door and allowed that hatred to come back. Janae Cousin, who was in attendance, told the Associated Press that she voted for Sanders in 2016 primaries and that as of now, she'll absolutely vote for him again if he runs in 2020. But Catherine said that if Bernie runs again, I'll definitely give him serious consideration. But I'm from Massachusetts, and I'm quite a big fan of Elizabeth Warren, referring to that state's U.S. Senator who may also consider a run for president. New Hampshire ballot questions concern right to sue government, right to privacy. Questions about citizens' right to privacy and to sue the government will appear on the November 6th ballot in New Hampshire. If 2/3 of voters approve question 1, citizens who are eligible to vote will have standing to sue their state, county, or local government, including their school boards, restoring a right that was taken away in 2014. Question 2. Ask voters if they would like to create a constitutional right to privacy from government. If approved, the amendment Article 2B to the right to privacy select of the state's constitution would read, an individual's right to live free from government instructions in private or personal information in nature essential and inherent. To read each ballot question in full, visit this link. And here is a look at this link. Record high voter turnout expected for midterm elections. 540K people expected to vote tomorrow. Let's take a listen to this video from WMUR News 9, Tim Callery.
$540,000 people are predicted to cast their vote. The Secretary of State's office says that would set a midterm general election record.
Hopefully, we can change it around, turn it around anyway. We just need people to get out and vote. That's what you got to do. The blue. We need to turn it blue.
We want Trump's agenda to continue making our country great again. And, you know, if the Congress goes back to the Democrats, that's going to be a big problem.
But why are the numbers so high?
On the Democratic side of things, you have a lot of voters who have been fired up since the 2016 election about getting a chance to vote for a Democratic Congress. On the other side of the aisle, you have a lot of Republican voters who see this as a referendum on the Trump administration and want to turn out and express their support for the White House. And
so how will each race stack up? In CD1, Galderi says right now it looks like that seat will remain blue, with Chris Pappas winning over Eddie Edwards.
There have been a couple of polls that suggest this could be a close race, but I think Pappas has advantages in terms of fundraising, in terms of name recognition.
For CD2, Galderi says the political pulse is beating in favor of Annie Kuster over her opponent, Steve Negron.
She is in a position, thanks to her fundraising relative to Steve Negron, where she is probably feeling very comfortable going into Election Day.
And Galderi says Governor Sununu should also feel comfortable about holding his spot in the State House over opponent Molly Kelly.
He's led in every poll that's been released of the race. You know, there are Democrats who argue that this race is tightening up, and if you had, you know, really massive Democratic turnout, perhaps you could see an upset. But I think, you know, Sununu is probably favored going into Tuesday.
And Galderi says besides those three races, people will also want to keep an eye on the other local ones that are happening, including those for the Executive Council and the State House and State Senate races. We're live here in Manchester. I'm Tim Callery, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And now let's take a look at this live stream, a little bit of this live stream video with Catherine Underwood from NBC Boston and political analyst Scott Spradling. Let's take a look at this video for a little bit.
Hi there, everyone. Good afternoon. My name's Catherine Underwood. I am the New Hampshire Bureau Chief for NBC 10 Boston. What that means is that I cover all the day's news day to day, from crime to politics, for the NBC affiliate in Boston, Massachusetts. We are thrilled to be coming to you live from the State House here in Concord, New Hampshire. Now, because New Hampshire is home to the First in the Nation primary, I do cover politics quite often, but I certainly don't do so every day. When I do, I bring in the expertise of our political reporter, NBC 10's political reporter, Allison King, who you all heard from at 11 o'clock this morning from Massachusetts. I oftentimes bring in my good friend and colleague, political analyst Scott Spradling. Scott, I've been doing this for years, but you got me beat.
Well, maybe by a couple of years, but you're still doing a great job on the air. And hi, everybody. My name is Scott Spradling. I was the political reporter at the ABC affiliate here in New Hampshire for about 12 years. I spent 15 years doing New Hampshire broadcast media, mainly focused on politics, and I've spent the last 10 doing essentially media consulting work and essentially whatever Catherine tells me to do is what I end up doing.
So I oftentimes pick Scott's brain because he is a wealth of information. But what we're going to do and how we're going to start things off here is we've got to start with a really fun fact. about the State House here. So we are in the balcony overlooking the House chamber. And the legislature, now you can explain a little bit more, Scott, but here at the State House, the legislature is one of the largest legislative bodies in the entire world, just right here in New Hampshire, right?
That's right. We are the third largest legislative body behind Congress and Parliament. The seats you see behind us, there are 400 members of the New Hampshire House, and we're only a population of 1.3 million in New Hampshire, so that's a lot of representation. We also have a 24-member Senate, so at 424, we rank 3 in terms of English-speaking legislative bodies in the world.
Yeah, politics is a pastime around here. Everyone is involved. And so what we want to get started with is really, I know you always have your finger on the pulse of New Hampshire politics. New Hampshire is a purple state. Scott, do you think that will hold true come the midterms?
I think so. You know, the big question coming into 2018 and the midterms, this is looking to be an election that might be a referendum on President Trump, one way or the other. There's been a lot of talk about the blue wave, right? How many Democrats are going to turn out and vote? In New Hampshire, that conversation's no different, but historically, our state has been purple. Republicans win some big races, Dems win the others, and I think in 2018, that'll be the same. I think we'll see victories on both sides of the aisle.
Okay, so on the ballot, the only statewide issue on the ballot on Tuesday, the only thing that really matters to every single resident in the state of New Hampshire is the governor's race.
Right.
So we've got Republican incumbent Chris Sununu and Democratic challenger Molly Kelly. Right now, Sununu's going into Tuesday with more than a 60% approval rating. And Scott, for somebody seeking re-election, those are good numbers.
You bet, yeah. Combine the fact that here in New Hampshire, it's only happened a couple of times in our state history that a freshman incumbent governor has not won re-election. Combine that with that 60% approval rating that Catherine just mentioned. That's a nice magic number that usually spells victory for an incumbent governor. This race has been relatively politely run. The campaign issues have really focused on things like paid family leave and education funding. And for the most part right now, Chris Sununu, the incumbent, enjoys favorability among not just Republicans, but among independents and a few Dems as well. So at least right now, the conventional wisdom is that he gets 2 more years.
So we've also seen Molly Kelly, some of her ads, you know, I get her emails into my inbox every day, and we've seen that her strategy really has been to draw some parallels between Governor Sununu and President Trump, and we've seen that strategy in races across the country. In your opinion, do you think that strategy will work on Tuesday?
And Catherine, you asked the central question. That is the big question going in, and it's why there's such a difference of opinion about the size of the blue wave, if there's going to be one in New Hampshire. There are some who are essentially saying, well, she's tried to attach President Trump and any negatives with him to our current governor, and that has not necessarily been successful. But the question ultimately turns into, if that many Democrats are going to turn out and just vote statewide in New Hampshire, that gives Molly Kelly a shot.
I actually just spoke with Governor Sununu this morning, and I kind of asked him that question, Scott, and he said, hey, I don't think it's going to work. He said, I think that strategy is a bust. He said, I don't think Congress is getting anything done for us. He said, but here in New Hampshire, look at the numbers. So he is really relying on his record at this point.
No doubt. And look, the polls right now are showing him with a lead anywhere between 9 and maybe 15 points. And again, like you mentioned, that approval rating number is one of the best ones that you can use to measure whether or not a governor is going to be reelected.
Okay, so we'll see. Kind of switching gears now, we have to look at a big race, Congressional District 1. We have 2 congressional districts in the state of New Hampshire, but in CD1, we've got a wide open seat. That seat is being left vacant by Carol Shea Porter. She's a Democrat, and she's retiring. So that seat's wide open. Obviously, Republicans hoping to turn it red. That seat has flip-flopped over the past 16 years. So could go either way, but at this point, we're seeing that Chris Pappas, Democrat Chris Pappas, may have a lead over Eddie Edwards, who is calling himself a political outsider. So talk a little bit about that race for us.
I think one of the most interesting things, especially for folks watching from outside of New Hampshire, no matter what, no matter who wins, history will be made. We will either have in Chris Pappas the first ever openly gay congressman for New Hampshire, or in Eddie Edwards the first ever African American congressman. Now, ironically, that's not what the conversation has been like on the campaign trail.
No, we haven't heard it at all. People aren't talking about that. While we think it's incredibly interesting, and I think our viewers across the country will as well, people are really focused on the issues.
That's right. It's kind of that live for your die mentality that's the state motto.
Yeah,
is
you
that-
do anything you want with your personal
it.
life, but get stuff done here in the state of New Hampshire.
That's exactly right. And so Chris Pappas is on the New Hampshire Executive Council. It's a 5-member council that works closely with the governor. And so he is someone who has been a public servant. For those who don't know this background, he's also very popularly attached to a restaurant in Manchester, our state's largest city. And he's very popular. He's extremely well known.
Absolutely, because the restaurant is incredibly popular.
It absolutely is. I mean,
It's home of the chicken fingers.
that's
right,
it. That
right?
is honestly
and
how
they do
he
have
is
great
known.
chicken fingers, but
Yeah.
that's how the restaurant is known.
That's right. And then Eddie Edwards has a law enforcement background where he served as the chief of the State Liquor Enforcement Bureau in New Hampshire for a number of years. And he's no stranger to political insiders up here in Concord, but he's never held elected office before. So that's the mix. And the conversation really has been on hardcore bread and butter issues, everything from Social Security and Medicare reform to balancing the budget, international relations. It has been a very traditional type of fight. And because it's a purple district in the first CD, this is a competitively close race. And it looks right now like Chris Pappas is leading narrowly, but this could be an Eddie Edwards win.
Yeah, and when we spoke with Eddie on the campaign trail, you know, he's proud to say, I am a political outsider. I'm not doing this for any other reason other than I see what's wrong and I want to make a difference. And that seems to be striking a chord with a lot of people.
I think you're right. And again, this is another one of those races where the question of if there's a big blue wave, how does that impact this race? I do think that the Democrats are looking pretty good, not just in the first CD, but Catherine in the second as well.
Well, take it from there. The second district,
Sure.
We've got an incumbent, Annie Custer. She's looking for a 4th term, and she seems to be sitting pretty comfortably.
I think so, yes. Right now, Annie Custer, the Democrat, has been serving with some distinction in the second CD, and the district in New Hampshire, which encompasses from top to bottom the entire state, but it's the western part of the state, it is a district that has traditionally, historically been more friendly to either more moderate Republican voices or to the Democrats. So for the challenger, Steve Negron, a conservative Republican New Hampshire House member who has sat in the seats behind us, he has a bit of an uphill battle because the geography is tough in that district.
Okay, and so at this point, I mean, those are our big issues on the ballot on Tuesday, but for our viewers, and I know so many of you are watching from across the country, I think what's really interesting is to talk about what happens on November 7th. We are looking at a crazy 14 months ahead leading up to the first in the nation primary here in New Hampshire. Scott, can you please compare for us what this year is going to look like compared to years past?
Yeah, and I've been asking people, talking about the New Hampshire presidential primary, which, as Catherine points out, it starts the day after the votes are counted here on campaign 2018.
Yeah, I wasn't misspeaking. November
it
7th
starts.
is really, once those votes are tallied November
Yeah.
6th, November 7th, we start looking
That's
ahead, right?
Because think of it this way, kids. The New Hampshire presidential primary vote happens in about 14 months from right now. So you really only have 1 year between this election and people casting ballots in the presidential election for 2020. So we're right on top of it. And to answer your original question, it'll be insane. There are probably somewhere north of 30 Democratic candidates who are kicking tires, many of whom have already visited New Hampshire quietly, that are looking very seriously at running for president. And we, in previous cycles, have looked at fields of candidates where if you've got 12, you have a bunch.
Last time around, it was
That's a
insane
big
just
deal.
trying to keep up. It was.
This may put the media and voters to a test that we've never had before if we have this many significant candidates. And by that, I mean mayors of large cities, members of Congress, governors, members of the Senate, former ambassadors. You have a long list of people from near and from far away who could be battling it out, including the return of potentially Bernie Sanders, the return potentially of Hillary Clinton. I mean, these are people who haven't formally crossed their names off from last time around. So this could be interesting.
Yeah, can you name drop a few people who have already been here?
Sure. Well, I mean, on Monday, Cory Booker was here, the senator from New Jersey. I think that's the most recent visit. And there are a number of others who have been here as well. Elizabeth Warren is only 50 miles from where we're standing right now. Deval Patrick, former governor of Massachusetts, has made a couple of quiet visits as well. So we have a lot of folks that are neighboring states that'll be here a lot. But we have many, in fact, the mayor of Los Angeles has been here multiple times already. That just shows the geography is starting to formulate around New Hampshire.
It gets really exciting this time of year. So we hope that this was interesting and informative for all of you. Scott, did I miss anything that you'd like to add that you want our viewers to know about the political landscape here in New Hampshire?
I don't think so. I think most of us are very excited on the other side of November 6th to kick off the presidential primary and the grassroots traditional campaigning that marks what it's like being here in New Hampshire. From real people in New Hampshire, it is definitely a process we take a lot of pride in.
And we are going to bring that all to you on the campaign trail, so you are sure to see Scott. You'll also see me as well on NBC 10 Boston, and I'm sure along the way on NBC News. So for all of us, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, and there you go. A look at that live stream video to help you better understand what to expect tomorrow for Election Day. And let's take a look at your election forecast for tomorrow for Election Day with meteorologist Mike Haddad.
Hello everyone, meteorologist Mike Haddad here in the Stormwatch 9 Weather Center tracking more wet weather. Yeah, it's been kind of a soggy stretch for quite some time, and here comes more rain that moves in and out of here by early tomorrow morning. But there's a break in that rain, so heading out for Election Day Tuesday, after a couple of light showers early in the morning, there'll be a break from the mid or late morning through about midday, and then this batch of heavier rain approaches right in time for the afternoon. So here we go on Futurecast, rain in and out of here for the evening, ending by about 7, 8 tomorrow morning. A couple of light showers or a touch of drizzle in some spots. Temperatures actually rising a little bit into the early part of your Tuesday. And then by midday, upper 40s to around 50 with clouds, maybe a few bright spots, but not a lot of sun, if any. And then here comes that heavier rain back to our west, moving in during the afternoon. Could be a couple of downpours, maybe even a rumble of thunder as temperatures rise into the upper 40s to the lower half of the 50s. Then finally, later tonight, tomorrow night into Wednesday, the rain is out of here and we get back to clear skies. And look at this, even though it'll be breezy, we'll have a lot of sun south of the notches, more clouds up north, and highs from near 50 north to the upper 50s south.
Okay, and that's your Election Day forecast for Election Day tomorrow. And now let's take a look at a sample ballot. This is a sample ballot from Deerfield, New Hampshire. Because I live in Deerfield, New Hampshire, I'm going to show you that ballot. Here's a look at the sample ballot for tomorrow for Election Day. For governor, vote for not more than one. Democrat candidate is Molly Kelly. Republican candidate is Chris Sununu, and Libertarian candidate is Gilletta Jarvis. For representative in Congress, vote for not more than one. For Democratic candidate, it is Annie Custer. Republican candidate, Steve Negron, and Libertarian candidate, Justin O'Donnell. For Executive Council, for Democratic candidate, Gary Chenoweth, Republican candidate, Ted Gastis, and Libertarian candidate, Richard Tomaso. For State Senator, vote for not more than one. For Democrat, Christopher Rowdy. Republican, John Reagan. For State Representative, Rockingham District 2, vote for not more than 3. For Democrat, Lloyd Carey, Gwen Friend, and Rebecca Hutchins. For Republican candidates, Alan Burston, James Spinell, and Kevin Verville. For State Representative, Rockingham District 32, vote for not more than one. Tom Chase, Democratic candidate, and Terry Roy, Republican candidate. For sheriff, Chuck Mose, Republican. For county attorney, Patricia Conway, Republican. County treasury, David E. Ahier, Democrat, and Scott Prestley, Republican. For Register of Deeds, Bill Tappan, Democrat, and Kathy Stacy, Republican. For Register of Probe, Bob Davidson, Democrat, and Ray Tweedy, Republican, and Libertarian, Griffin Patrio. And for County Commissioner, Joshua Brady, Democrat, and Kevin Sear, Republican. And your 2018 Constitution Amendment questions are right here. And now I'm going to tell you what I think are my predictions for the results for tomorrow night. So, candidates for governor, Governor Chris Sununu and Molly Kelly. My prediction, I'm going to say Chris Sununu is going to win this race. He is in the lead on the governor's race. But if more Dems come out and vote, then Molly Kelly will win. But right now, it looks like Chris Sununu is in a safe spot to win, so I'm going to go with Chris Sununu on that, and I give him a grade A. Candidates for 1st Congressional District, Chris Pappas and Eddie Edwards. My prediction, I'm going to say Chris Pappas is going to win this race. He has a great lead and record. Pappas has advantages in terms of fundraising, in terms of name recognition, but this race could be a very close race. It is a 50-50 on this race. So it could either be Chris Pappas or Eddie Edwards, and if Chris Pappas wins, he'll be the first openly gay Democrat, and if Eddie Edwards wins, he will be the first African American Republican for the seat. So it will be a tight race on that, and kinda a tight race on the governor's race as well. And candidates for 2nd Congressional District, U.S. Rep. Annie Kuster and Republican Steve Negron. My prediction, I'm going to say Annie Kuster is going to win this race. She has a great lead and record. She is in a position, thanks to her fundraising, relevant to Steve Negron, where she is probably feeling pretty comfortable going into Election Day. So I'm going to say Annie Kuster will probably win this race. But we'll have to see what the results are. Let me know. Comment below and let us know what you think and who you think will win the race tomorrow in all the categories. Comment below and let us know. And join me tomorrow night for my election coverage tomorrow night, beginning at 7 o'clock p.m. I'll see you back here at 7 o'clock p.m. for Commitment 2018 Election Day coverage, when all the results will be coming in. I hope you all enjoyed this special, everyone. Have a wonderful night. See you back here tomorrow. Goodbye, everyone.